So we are together conference participants, and we are looking forward to your presentation. And thank you that you could find time, and you are waiting there for us. So you can start. I think you sent your presentation, yes?
Yes. So first, I would like to thank and be grateful for your invitation to be part of this conference. And I really do apologize that I'm not able to be there and participate actively and communicate with you directly. Well, what I would like to talk today would be about the bottom-up approaches of implementation of the European Landscape Convention. You can see that the European Landscape Convention is very much about public participation. So every single objective and task that is demanded from the convention, or that people agreed to implement the convention, asks for public participation. So we start off with landscape participation, the identification of stressors, the dynamics, its assessment. These all together coming together in the definition of landscape quality objectives in order to integrate this ultimately in landscape policies and plans. So that is the general framework. So much has been done in the convention of putting all these things in place, like doing the identification, doing the assessment, expressing the landscape policy objectives, and trying to implement that in context planning, but not always the public participation parts has been very clearly integrated in that process. So when we do, and we pass to the next slide, when we look at the landscape perspectives, the European Landscape Convention has this clear outstanding focus on participation by saying that landscape is everywhere, and it is for and by everyone. So comparing with the other kind of classifications of place, mostly the UNESCO-led World Heritage on cultural landscapes, or the nature of protected landscapes and seascapes, which are looking at specific, unique, diverse, specific characteristics in the convention. We have to look at the whole landscape and whole of the country. And if we move on to the next slide and look at the definition, we can clearly see that the people is at the heart of the definition of the very landscape. So it is an area as perceived by people. So people do define what landscape is. Next slide, we can also understand why. So when we go back to the process, how the Landscape Convention was constructed, the process that was behind it until its signature, we see that the Congress of the local and regional authorities had a major role. So they stand for democracy at local level, for democratic process. And so the integration of people, the public participation is a central aspect of their work within the Council. Moving to the next slide, we can see that when we look at the text of the convention, it says, well, on one hand, it recognizes the landscape as a component of people's surrounding and the foundation of their identity, and claims it to be integrated into regional and town planning policy, and to establish procedures for public participation, or participation of the general public, as it says. And here we have the application of the subsidiary principle that is embedded in the convention, not defining exactly, giving proper and strict guidelines on what has to be done. So, in every case, these procedures have to be adjusted, have to be sorted out and defined case by case. So, two questions arise. And moving to the next slide, two questions arise, and that is, who is the public? And what is participation? And so, in order to progress on this definition of these procedures, we have to find in each case, in each landscape, what that exactly means. Moving to the next slide, and I brought here, and I know it is it's not very contested, but it has been some criticism on Sherry Art's letter of participation, which was first published in 1969. After these decades, and despite all the critics that it has been made, it establishes a framework for what participation means. And participation is not black and white. There are various degrees of participation. And we have to sort out which kind of procedure and level we should progress. Sherry Einstein, and this is one of the critics that has been made, is that she wants to move, so the higher the better, wants to move to citizen control, which is not in every case what really the citizens do want, to have the absolute control. They might have to want a part control. So it's a way of progressing and framing how it can be. So, if we look what participation means in the dictionary, it says, well, it's the act of taking part in an activity of events. We do participate in events, are participating in event, I'm participating in event. But this is, in terms of the participation procedures that the Landscape Convention demands, not necessarily enough. So, we want to move to another step, which is establishing mechanisms where the public can express their opinions, and that these opinions are taken into account, that they do matter, and so that ideally they can exert influence on the decisions. So this is mainly a question of power, and on how power is distributed and where the power is coming from and where the decisions are located. When we move to the next slide, then we have to see, well, and then who is the public? Is the public, are these the actual users of, or the public of the landscape? Is it the actual users of the landscape? Is it the potential users, so those that have not been there but would like to go there, want to have the possibility to go there? Or is it the local population, and, well, as a whole, the general public? Or is it the some selective part of this general public, so the local stakeholders? Well, there has been many debates, and literature is using different kinds of publics in different ways. What we can observe is that those that use the upper, so the actual users and the potential users, looking at the users, they look at the multi-functionality of the landscape, the services that are provided versus cultural services as tourism. So it is about a use that attracts, or possibility to attract different kinds of people to that landscape. And then you have the problem, when you go with this definition, you have the problem, well, potential users, where are they? Can we geographically locate them? So is it for a rural landscape or for a natural landscape? Is it all of the urban population as well? These are the kind of consumers of that landscape. So that's a kind of issue when you deal with that kind of approach, but it gives you diversity of the users that are in that landscape. Other approaches, and most of them more linked to planning and action, they prefer to use local population. So the population that is that landscape, that is affected by its surrounding, the quality of those surroundings, and that is also be motivated for action. So it is mostly about identity and community when we approach the lower two part of this kind of population spectrum, that we can put it here in this way. It's never comprehensive, but it has a way of categorizing this public that we can address when using the landscape concept. So there have been some efforts being made in integration, or making the integration operational in the context of landscape identification. You can find examples, practice, or also research on this. On landscape assessments, there are lots of literature on methods, approaches, techniques to collect and capture people's perceptions, and also defining landscape quality of objectives in ways of doing prospective studies, future-oriented studies that involve, in some cases, also the students. So let's look at this specific three aspects of the convention that have found some kind of operationalization in planning, for instance. This is an old figure from the Elkai project from 2004, which shows basically different kinds of mapping, landscape identification and mapping approaches. From what I've read and from experience, so I don't know if we're in the same slides. We are on the slide by Groom 2004. Yeah. So what we can see there is that the more subjective components of the landscape characterization are more white. So we are looking more at the white part of the thing. That's what interests us. And we are asking ourselves, well, why is that not taken into account? Aspects as identity, sense of place, coherence, effectiveness, scenics, aesthetics. And why are the public, the professional, and interest groups not taken into account? So this is kind of the white part of this table. And so we can see and ask ourselves why that has happened. And what we can observe is that different kinds of approaches, different kinds of methodologies are needed to tackle this part of the table. So these are not necessarily the same people that do the right part of the table, that the left part of the table. Those are not those that deal with the geology that we deal with identity. So it is filling out this table properly for interdisciplinary communication process and necessary by involving the people and knowledge of the people to this. So this has to progress, and there is not much, even though this is a decade old, there's not much progress that has been done integrating. So in this context, so I think here is still space for progress. Moving to the next slide, we can see some approaches that have been carried out. So doing public surveys, landscape mapping, trying to understand what's the public and how the public reads the landscape, and what are the processes that distinguish it from, for instance, experts that and there has been also efforts done, for instance, by our colleague Nora Fagaho, who has been working participatory mapping in some communities in order to create a character map, custom character map. So with people, design it with people from scratch. Moving to the slides, next slide. There has been a recent publication where also Nora Fagaho is presenting. Actually, the picture that you see on the cover of the book from her work that she has done. And this overview of landscape character assessment and methods that have been done. What the editors conclude is that participative and shared landscape visualization is still more preached than practiced. So it is mostly expert-led. There is the recognition of the need of involving, but then having the tools and the method and using them not only to collect, which is sometimes the easiest part, but also to integrate with the other kinds of data is still very little done and very little experience out there. So in the next slide, we see that this landscape character assessment, by building very much on or through the construct sense of place, it is also there and it's easier done. So it has been, the local scale has been the one where it has been more practiced, but because it's easier to capture people, and it is also there that landscape matters most to people, and where people use landscape to connect themselves to their local surrounding. In the next slide, we see, for instance, the work that we have been working on, which is about landscape identity. So using landscape identity mapping as a way to identify landscape features that do matter to people and to their identity, and that should be taken care of within the planning process. Planning, and those of you that might be involved in planning and making plans, land use plans, not to be at local scale, so I'm not talking about the strategic level, but at zoning plans, for instance. You know that it's all about maps. So everything that cannot be mapped has at some stage difficulty of being integrated at the same level as the other things that are being mapped. And so what we have been trying to work on is to map identity. So typically a topic which is not coming from disciplinary backgrounds, we think with environmental psychologists, this topic that is not necessarily mapped by them, but by bringing and capturing these views from the public on what does really matter to them in their landscape. And this is important to find tipping points. So to find a tipping point of change. So how much can I change until the people disconnect from their landscape? And where is, and you can see it in that way, what you cannot take away that is important to people. But there are some landscapes where, and because the landscape is everywhere, there are also some landscapes where it's the other way around, where people are disconnected. And what can you do to reconnect people to that landscape? You are able to do that in this. There have been other interesting exercises, and I think I bring here the work by Lone Christensen and Jørn Primdahl that have been in Denmark. They're doing also this mapping exercise, for instance, on favorite places and how people select and assess these places, what they want to keep in this landscape. Moving to the next slide on the landscape quality objectives. These are defined within the European Landscape Convention as the formulation by the competent authorities of the aspirations of the public with regards to the landscape features and their surroundings. So it calls for, on one hand, a definition of strategies, and on the other hand, on the communication with the local public. Landscape scenarios are an interesting tool to bridge the two and to bring about what are the visions for the people. And we have seen this morning in Eckhart Lange's presentation all the various techniques that can be used to visualize, to represent that landscape and those visions in a way that it is possible to communicate with the public. Moving to the next slide, I just bring here what can be an approach to scenario development, where based on critical uncertainties, you can define kind of different worlds. And the next slide, you can make them visual, or you can identify what is the content of each of those worlds based on driving forces that are going to shape them. And then you can progress naturally, as you have seen also in the presentation this morning, on fly-throughs, walks, making the experience different. But what it is important to say is that this kind of simulations, it is not only important to communicate results and to make it more an experience, a landscape experience, but sometimes in this scenario work, the process is more important than the results. It is not really the outcome that matters, because we are looking ahead 30 years, and we are working with a great amount of uncertainty. And so what is most important is the process. And so it is not about only communicating the result, but also establishing techniques that make the public work the scenarios from scratch and be part of it, in order to understand what are the alternatives and to be motivated themselves for action. Because only being part of the process motivates for action. We have, and we sometimes, as in the scientific community, we lose a little bit track that decisions are not made facts. We can have a lot of information, and we decide differently. We know that smoking kills, but we do that. And There are lots of facts, lots of evidence. But what does really motivate us for action is emotion behind it. And so creating a bond within the process of creation of the vision is a very important part that can shape also ultimately the decisions towards action for a specific or towards a specific future. Let's move on. These scenarios can also be integrated in mapping, so you can have different kinds of scenarios for different kinds of landscapes. So you don't have to have one scenario for the whole area, but you can subdivide that in landscape subtypes, let's put it in that way, which is then also better suited for the planning process. The next slide shows also what Christensen and Pindal are doing in Denmark, and they have this landscape strategy process. They don't call it scenarios, but what they do is creating visions as well. And they start in this strategy-making process exactly with the people in the place at local scale by building interest and confidence. So creating trust as a kind of a stone, a grounding stone for creating this strategy and creating a common goal for action. The next slide shows us, well, when we talk about participation, we are not talking, it's not the same as talking about bottom-up. So participation has been also ways, and this is the one that is in place. So participation as a way of consultation. So we can be there in the middle of this ladder of Sherry Arnstein and think, well, we just consult. In law, it says we have to participate, we go, we inform, we consult, and then we have what people think. But then we decide or not the context, experts and decisions as a whole, what we do integrate and what we do not integrate. And then there are some small pieces of decision that are left, for instance, to the public, like typically in the now very popular, for some years, very popular participatory budgets, where the public gets a small share of budget of the local communities, but they can decide what they want to do and this action. And then on the other hand, we have this bottom-up approaches, which are grassroots, which are people that mobilize themselves towards decision, and they want to be empowered and they want to have more control of what is happening in their landscape. But this needs also a context, and that is why, moving to the next slide, I argue that to move to a participatory process that is definitely bottom-up and that comes from the people, we need to change the landscape governance process. So we need new forms of governance that enable, that support, that stimulate this kind of participation of the public. And in order for the public to do so and to be motivated for participation, they have to find trust, and they have to find also that they do matter, that their opinions matter. And this is a fundamental part. And then we need to establish partnerships, and we need to have space for this people to organize themselves and to bring their ideas to places where they know that they can be integrated in a proper way and not being dismissed, heard and dismissed. So my final slide, just for concluding, I would say as moving towards this bottom-up approaches, we have a lot of scientific knowledge. I don't think there is a lack of knowledge There is also not a lack nowadays, lack of technology that's this from happening. I think that we have to think about committing to the process and integrating that knowledge and taking advantage of this technological development that are in place that can foster this this process. But we have also to build on the critical mass. So people have to be informed, and they have to be updated, and they have feel that they have a voice. And so also building on landscape education and the awareness is a relevant part of this process. And then, well, working on this new governance models that harness this bottom-up initiatives instead, or despite turning them down and building them into this kind of top-down hierarchical structure of participation that is a kind of a tick box, well done or not done, that is mostly being. So I finalized with the last slide with this picture of a very recent picture of this movement against climate change, which is, well, a grassroots movement that is inspiring, as you would like to see landscape being also integrated and discussed in the public sphere. Thank you very much, and sorry for this trouble with communication.